Hey there, I'd like to thank Knuckle Down for their latest track entitled Yellow Claw, fresh out of the studio. If you couldn't make it down in their last gig, not to worry. They'll be back down at Borders in Los Angeles on March 3rd. Tickets are going quick and they're $12 at the door. If you'd like more information, please call 323-462-9621. And if you like what you hear, go over to their Facebook page and like them, or check them out on SoundCloud. Good afternoon, everybody. So I wanted to take a minute to welcome everybody to another podcast of CNE. This week we have the full crew here. So why don't we all introduce ourselves? I'll start. My name is David Caduta. We'll go left to right.
Hello, my name is Aaron Lanuza.
I'm Jazz Pyatt.
Hi, my name's Nick, and I'm I'm Nick. That was a dumb joke.
And I'm Skylar Vardy.
Okay, glad to have Jazz here for our first podcast. And Nick, of course, you knew from the very first one. Uh-huh. And both Nick and Jazz are huge comic book, along with Skylar, fans and DeadPool fans. So we all saw the movie, yes?
Yes, excellent.
Okay, So what was everybody's first reaction? Let's go right around.
Okay, well, you know what? DeadPool to me is like Zach from Save the Bell.
Saved by the Bell.
Saved by the Bell. Saved by the Bell. Meets the big brother Francis from Malcolm in the Middle.
Okay.
Meets the carefree nature of Finn from Adventure Time. So I thought that was pretty nice. Let's see. Well, I guess like the comedy that was awesome, and it kept playing a great sequence. Like it kept going very well. It flowed very well.
I thought so.
And flow from that.
What about you, Jess?
I thought it was very smart and witty. I like how they stayed true to the character. They didn't try to make it like only funny or only like action packed and like super gory.
Right.
It was like a good balance of everything.
Nice.
So.
I thought the same thing. What about you, Nick?
I liked how it was very self-aware, and it poked fun at the studios and like the part where they show up to the house and they're like, oh, this place is so big. It's like we only see two X-Men.
And we'll get into all the Easter eggs a little bit later.
I like how they tied it in with a universe that already existed, but it was something that we hadn't seen before, and they were able to have fun with that. I like that.
Definitely. And lastly, Skylar, what was your impressions of it?
We finally have DeadPool. Like, after they sewed his effing mouth shut, like they said in the very first trailer, we finally get, like, a definitive,
a real,
like, actual version of DeadPool. We had the cartoons that could only push it so far, but we got the raunchy, we got the very profane, violent DeadPool that we know from the comics. And there are some differences, but I like that it was the most true comic book character I've seen on screen in a long time.
And I think that's the big thing. And I think just there were so many different dynamics to this movie. I mean, not being a comic book fan and knowing it, but just, I mean, I'm a fan of the MCU, but just the fact that it's, and I know he's not even part of it, but
It's not part of the MCU at all. It's in X-Men.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah, which is completely separate from anything Marvel.
Well,
in terms of the
film franchises, yes.
And I think this was the big thing for a Marvel film. This was the first rated R movie, and they were able to just do whatever they wanted. And I mean, it was the fact that they had the language. The language never even bothered me. As a matter of fact, it was funny. And the violence, one of the funniest scenes I even thought was beginning with the highway scene when he was counting the bullets. I mean, he says, oh, I only have 12 bullets. Let me count them. And so he proceeds to go through and use all 12 bullets. But it was comical how he did that. And I
like the nubby hand.
Yeah. I mean, he gets his hand cut off later in the film, and it's like, okay, well, he falls into the trash can. But, but there's so many different things. And what you were talking about with the X-Men, we're going to probably see him in the next X-Men movie, whatever that is.
We will not see him in the next X-Men movie. Most likely what we'll end up seeing is like X-Force or New Mutants.
Okay.
Which is what Negasonic Teenage Warhead is
okay.
from. Is the New Mutant comics.
That was a great. And that whole character was hilarious
Your name
in
is
itself. Yeah. So that right there at the end when they're all going into the shipyard, and they're all standing there, and so Angel Dust comes down and says, he says, well, that's gonna really hurt the knees, and so he's like, yeah, so that's why I brought him, and she proceeds to kick Colossus's butt. Oh yeah, well, that's why I brought her. Oh, wait a minute, we let her finish the tweet. Okay, go get her, Tiger. So it was so many different things. The sense of humor, the writer, and what was so funny about that, I thought, was this was the same guy that did G.I. Joe Retaliation.
Which wasn't a bad movie.
Well,
it just wasn't a G.I. Joe movie.
Right, compared to what G.I. Joe was, and I enjoyed G.I. Joe. I just thought Retaliation was horrible. But that's for another time. But it's amazing how one writer can be so good and then
have a reputation for something else.
Exactly. Mediocre, for lack of a better
word. I also think that this movie did well because it was done right. It was done how Ryan Reynolds, because Ryan Reynolds has been trying to get this movie made for a long time.
Yeah.
Why don't you guys explain to me the Easter eggs? Some of the Easter eggs that people may not have really gotten.
So
I mean, there were so many, but why don't you start?
I'll be honest, I don't think I know Deadpool enough to have picked up on.
I
picked up on a little.
Yeah,
bit,
so did I. Well,
I'm sure
what was
Scott,
one of your
Scott probably
favorites?
knows them all.
So one of my favorites is definitely the introduction of a sidekick.
Yes.
Which, there's a lot of people just glossed over. Because in the comic books, he has a sidekick who's a Hydra agent that he drags along onto missions. And unfortunately, Hydra's owned by the MCU, so they can't use Hydra at all. So at the very end, he runs into an old friend of his named Bob, who happens to be a mercenary. And instead of killing him like the other mercenaries, he just simply knocks him out. And I really hope we get more of that character to come back, because one of the charms of the standard Deadpool comics is him dragging over other superheroes or Bob into his wild adventures and them going why am I here?
Well, what was one of the ones that you picked up on, Nick?
I don't know that I picked up on much of any. The only because I'll be honest, I haven't read Deadpool comics. I knew who the character was, and I'd heard people talk about him. So I picked up on all the things that were related to X-Men because I know X-Men.
Okay.
So that was the kind of stuff that I picked up on, but not necessarily the little things like the Bob thing. That went right over my head until
I just learned about that now.
What did you pick up on, Jazz? What was one of the Easter eggs, if any, did you see that you really laughed at?
Well, kind of like Nick, I'm not completely
right. Yeah.
With
no,
Deadpool. However, I have read a few of the comics.
Yeah.
They're hilarious.
Yeah.
And one thing that I partway through the movie, I was like, okay, when is he gonna start talking about chimichangas?
Yeah.
So the last 20 minutes, I finally got that.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised. I was the only one in the theater who was like,
He
brought it up.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So what was one of the Aaron? What was one of the things that you really, maybe not an Easter egg, but something that you noticed?
Well, I guess I'd have to agree with Nick and Jazzy about about not being able to have complete exposure to Deadpool beforehand. But I did notice that in the beginning we were introduced to Deadpool finding his name inside of the bar.
Yes.
That's something as I was looking or researching this as I was researching some of the comics, I realized that he actually found his name whenever he was in the research lab.
Yes.
So in the research lab, he was
which I didn't know, actually.
Yeah, he ended up finding his name because of the literal pool that he was in before he found his power.
Yeah.
And he found, I can understand that there's this cohesiveness between the characters in the movie that, his friend Ajax, or not Ajax, his friend in the bar.
Yes.
His
yeah,
name,
no, I know who you.
Yeah.
There was the bartender in the bar, which he comes back to actually get his missions from. Is the one you're referring to?
Yeah. So he and He and
Wade
Wilson. They both ended up making that name together. So I can understand that they both did that because it makes the story flow a lot better. But they changed that.
There's always going to be like, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was just gonna say, like, I don't think it was the kind of movie, like, there are some movies that you need to go in kind of knowing a bit about it.
Right.
I feel like with Deadpool, they just kind of like they were able to like introduce you.
Absolutely.
Something that I did notice was Vanessa. Her character in the comics is Copycat.
Okay.
So I noticed that she wasn't actually like.
Yeah, she's more of an original character to this storyline, like, because Deadpool has had about like 3 different origin stories throughout the comic book history. So there's one where he inherits Wolverine's powers. There's a couple others, like one he gets cursed by Thanos to have eternal life. Like there's a bunch of like little weird origin stories that Deadpool has, and like there's different like women throughout time, and Vanessa's kind of like a culmination of all of those to a degree.
Can we just talk about how none of the female characters were like 2D? They were all like actually like well-written female characters.
Absolutely. And I think that was...
I'm sorry, I don't see female or male anymore in this movie. It's just there's people being beat up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, and...
What about Negasonic, though?
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
like,
that
she
was...
doesn't have a lot of lines yet.
But that was some...
But it was very subtle writing with how that she didn't need a lot of lines for you to understand her character to have a little bit more depth.
Yeah.
Like
I can't
she
wait
was,
till the next movie for
I don't know if we'll see any more of her. I think if we see any more of like Negasonic, it'll be in like New Mutant stuff with Colossus, because that's like their home thing. Like Deadpool has been a part of like the Avengers. He's been a part of X-Men. He's been a part of the Fantastic Four at one point. Like he's been everywhere.
Well, you can imagine that he's the perfect character to join any of those fields.
Yeah, honestly,
because he's the perfect comedy relief.
Yeah,
and it's kind of cool because in like he's also a character in DC Comics. Like they have he's a canon character in DC.
Yeah,
no, like he had crossed over into DC.
Yeah.
He's legitimate. He can go into anything. It doesn't matter.
Wait a second, was it his character or was it like?
No, it's Wade Wilson.
His name was Wade Wilson.
Yeah, his name was Wade Wilson, and he's in a like a one-shot DC comic.
They also make fun of his character, and they give him a different name, and he's supposed to be someone else. Like he's supposed to be Wade Wilson, but his other name in DC is someone else.
Yeah.
No. There's a copy of either one. So in Marvel, it's Deadpool. In DC, it's Deathstroke. Deathstroke is Slade Wilson.
Yes.
Who's a serious version of Wade.
Yeah. So
my comic knowledge.
Number of I picked up on probably 3 or 4 different Easter eggs. Probably definitely the first one I noticed was Parker Boulevard. I don't know if anybody picked up on
Parker
that
Boulevard,
on the highway, on the highway sign. The other one is when Colossus is dragging Deadpool away and said, trying to bring him back to the house, and Ajax is basically he's got the sword in him, and he says, "Okay, so who's going to be Picard or McAvee?" Basically talking about Charles Xavier.
Yeah.
And the other one, and I laugh about this. It is funny. The other one I laugh about is when he's drawing the picture and he's whistling. and we see him and says, "Well, you want to know how I got this movie? Well, and he proceeds to tell us all about Wolverine or this is who. So,
I love that even though they couldn't get Hugh Jackman, like the rivalry between Deadpool and Wolverine is iconic, and even just keeping it to that was amazing.
And I think the other thing we got to talk about, and I think we touched upon this last week, was the marketing. What kind of marketing Marvel used. And I thought it was absolutely amazing that they could just do what they did, and it was just it appealed to everybody.
Yeah, what you're talking about is the marketing in the sense that they had they were talking about like real problems, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They were talking about the problems with testicular cancer.
Yeah, and it just
they brought them up.
This movie it made about $135 million over a 4-day weekend, and if
highest grossing first weekend of an R-rated movie.
Yeah, in a long time. and it was
very long
17th
time, yeah.
From what you were
all
saying, it was top
on
20.
Box Office Mojo. And I think that's just, when you look at all of the other movies, you go, wow, it's astounding. And so let me ask everybody, what did you think about the after credit scene?
I did not see it.
For everybody,
I
You didn't
stay
stay
for
for
it.
it. You didn't stay for it.
There's actually
So-
two after credit scenes.
right.
slightly.
There are two after credit scenes in this. Well, you describe one, and we'll see if I can.
So there's one that I'm going to let you talk about because that's your favorite, and then the first one is the animated thing that they do during the credits.
Right.
That's
okay,
yeah. So that's
So I
technically
think
an
everybody
after credit
saw that.
scene.
Yeah.
So about midway
Yeah.
through the credits, the screen goes black, and then there's you see a room, and Deadpool sticks his head out and says, "You're still here? I thought you'd leave."
in a
Yeah.
towel.
Yeah, you're still here?
In a
I thought
bathrobe,
you'd
yeah.
leave. So he basically says, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Oh, okay, well," and this is when he talks about the chimichangas, and he's like, I was just making some chimichangas or something to that effect, and he's like, "Go home. You got to leave here."
It's an entire spoof on Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah,
Like, that's all it is.
And so
Yeah.
he comes back and says, "Oh, so you're probably wondering what the next after credits scene is. All right, well, let me tell you about it." And you
No,
can
he
probably-
talks the next movie.
You're right. So he elaborates on the Deadpool 2, which, by the way, already got greenlit.
Yeah.
And
He
he
got greenlit
talks
before
about,
it got released.
Yeah, so what do you guys talk about Cable and what kind of character they are, real quick?
So Cable is the son of Cyclops from an alternate future where it goes to hell really fast. And so Cable, instead of sticking around in the future to allow it to happen or try to save the future, he goes to the past in order to try and correct the mistakes. Kind of similar to a Days of Future Past type event.
Right.
But this was way long ago. This is back in the 80s that this event happened. And so throughout the course of the comics, two X-Men have been very close to Deadpool. One is Cable and the other is Psylocke. Well, he just confirmed we're getting Cable in Deadpool 2, and we're getting Psylocke in X-Men Apocalypse in a couple months.
Yeah.
So the two biggest X-Men to his storyline are finally coming. As for his powers, it's very similar to Cyclops, except instead of coming out of his eyes, he can just be like, I can produce it out of anything.
Yeah.
So he uses a giant-ass gun in order to shoot lasers. Cable gun is what's basically going after.
That's going to be... that's coming out in a couple years. So how does everybody think X-Men Apocalypse, getting off that real quick, how does everybody think X-Men Apocalypse is going to be? I mean, is this going to be better than Days of Future Past and First Class? I mean, because this is the third one we've going to had now in a span of 5-6 years.
Well, what I was thinking, was that the previews themselves from just the Super Bowl itself.
Right.
I already know that it's going to be an epic.
It's going to be a
really
big
great.
movie. We
It's
all
looking-
know this.
There's
it
not-
looks great, incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it looks really intense.
Yeah.
But Apocalypse, it's himself. Just he's so big, and they're bringing it back from the Four Horsemen. I think that's just an interesting.
Scarlet looks like he doesn't agree.
Well, no. I completely agree. I'm just saying. I want to interject. It's you're definitely right. You're definitely right. I'm just saying. There's nowhere you can go but up from Last Stand when it comes to
Yes, absolutely.
Last Stand.
I couldn't be wrong.
Last Stand and Spider-Man 3. There's no worse finishes to trilogies.
Here's the thing. And here's the thing. Bryan Singer's coming back and doing Apocalypse.
Yes.
So this is going to be fascinating to see.
I think it'll be good.
Yeah, because everybody remembers X-Men 3. And
3?
When he did that, and it's just like, oh God, really? And I think this is a bigger and bolder and a younger cast.
Well, I think my main issue with the trailer right now is the acting from Apocalypse.
Yeah.
So I like all the other
It's
actors.
Oscar Isaac, isn't it? From Star Wars?
I don't.
Well, maybe then it's the writing because in the trailer it just sounds overly grandiose.
Yes.
But I think but his character is just that. So
yes and no. Apocalypse is very menacing, but he's not overly grandiose. That's more like a Galactus character. Apocalypse is supposed to be the Mussolini or Hitler of mutants. A lot of people always try to portray Magneto as that, but Apocalypse is really the dictator. Whereas Magneto just wants to have a separate world, Apocalypse is very much kill every non-mutant. And that's his just goal, is to create a world of mutants. and he's very imposing in that regard, but he's not like an over-the-top superhero or supervillain that you'd get from like 70s superhero cartoons. Mm-hmm. He's not one of those.
That's totally what it made it appear as
it almost appears that way, and I hope it's just that quote and they're trying to like show off like the more grandiose parts of him rather than like the more subtle parts of him. Mm-hmm. And the movie will be better, but that part alone, everything else looks fine, but that part alone scares me a bit.
So, getting back to Deadpool, Rick, so did everybody have that? I mean, because I know when I went to my showing, everybody was laughing. I mean, it was just laugh after laugh after laugh. Was that the way everybody? It was for everybody.
People laughed and clapped
and and I think that
crying.
That was I think crying and enjoyment because it was just so. Everybody had such a great job. It was written so well, and
when Deadpool checks his watch and he has a Adventure Time watch.
Oh, yeah.
That's so funny.
I mean, they were able to do so many different things with this and make it bloody and make it violent for all those that wanted it.
Do you think that there's going to be more R-rated superhero movies? Because now they're talking they might make the new Wolverine, which is Hugh Jackman's last.
It was killing me that they didn't already do
because Marvel is kind of has this tone already with Jessica Jones, and that's on Netflix. It's not in the theaters.
That's a very dark. It's a very dark.
So they've shown that they can do it, and people like it.
Me personally, what I'd like to see come out of this is like stuff from Neil Gaiman. A lot of his stuff is very dark, like Hellraiser or Sandman. There's the Hellraiser comics, which is the actual Constantine. Not the crappy Keanu Reeves thing that we got,
I watched that the other day, actually.
No, I mean, Hellraiser was...
Hellraiser comics are fantastic.
Wait, Hellraiser? Like
No, like, Constantine's comics are called Hellraiser.
Oh.
Yes, it's not called Constantine. Yeah. So, like, it also mixes with Neil Gaiman's Sandman, which deals a lot with Lucifer Morningstar and Michelangelo, the angels. It's all of the more biblical stuff. But it's very dark, very mature content. From the Marvel side, I mean, you have Wolverine, like you said. The third, like, if we're gonna go the third one, make Hugh Jackman look older and go Old Man Logan.
Yeah,
because Old Man Logan is a gritty comic.
Yeah,
and it's very dark, it's very mature, and it'd be a really good take. And you can even throw Deadpool in there. It'll be some more serious version.
Because this is going to be his last one. I think you need to have him be an older comic,
right?
And if this is. Now, to your question,
it wouldn't make sense though if he was just old all of a sudden.
No, right? Well, characters. I mean, you have to remember he's been in so many different films that he's going to.
How is he gonna age anyways?
I don't know.
Well, like he's been aging. He's already been aging, old, and then in Days of Future Past, you already see the gray hair coming in.
Yeah.
So like he's already like to where. Days of Future Past was 2 years ago now?
Right.
We'll probably have another year and a half until the third Wolverine movie's finally out.
Yeah. But Wolverine doesn't age.
He does, actually. So he ages at an incredibly slow rate. Uh-huh. He has a healing factor, but healing factor doesn't equal immortality.
Yeah. Okay, so is this going to be far into the future then?
No, this would be about a couple years after Days of Future Past. More or less what Old Man Logan, the comic book, is he kind of separates himself from the X-Men and becomes like a recluse. So it's kind of him, like... So being the gritty, like the grizzled old man who's like the old war veteran. I've seen all these. Like it's kind of like that, but told from the perspective of Wolverine, or actually, he doesn't even go by Wolverine anymore. He goes by Logan.
So let's have you guys jump in here.
So going back to the more R-rated, I think it was necessary that this movie was R-rated. It wouldn't have done the same. It wouldn't. It probably wouldn't have been successful at all. No.
If this were PG-13, you're absolutely right. I mean, to have $135 million in its opening weekend, there's no way.
It was impressive.
And I think it would have been an insult to Deadpool.
I don't think that just because like they did well with this that they're going to be like, okay, let's just like throw in a bunch of like F-bombs and like more blood.
No.
I feel like they're going to try to be careful about what other
Absolutely.
R-rated movies they make, just because like with Jessica Jones, they're able to make it a series, and I heard that was done well. But like if they had like made it into a movie, maybe it just...
Well, see, and to your point about that being on Netflix, you're able to get away with a lot more
Exactly.
on Netflix than in HBO than, let's say, a cable television where it's like even a.
I'm just saying that they didn't turn it into like a movie.
My point with that is that if they try to make a movie, I don't think they ever would have tried to make it a movie simply because they're like. To even touch Jessica Jones, because Deadpool's been done PG. Like, he's in, like, Spider-Man cartoons.
Exactly,
you know?
yeah.
But, like, Jessica Jones, it deals with so much mature content that if you were to make it even PG-13, you would be removing so much content from the character.
I'm saying they wouldn't have made it in a...
Absolutely.
It was just too much to do.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I
agree with
you. I think that if they do, like, the next movie that they might make might be like X-Force, maybe. Which I heard. I don't know if it's true, but they're kind of pushing for that right now. And Ryan Reynolds is.
Yeah,
X-Force is a really. It's not like incredibly dark, but it's pretty mature, and it would be a very good follow-up to this, at least in the comic book world.
Yeah.
For me personally, what really excites me about this movie doing so well. Rated R in terms of monetary value is a couple years ago, I want to say it was Guillermo del Toro tried to do a BioShock movie, and it had a rough estimate budget of about $100 million. And the reason why the studio never ended up approving it was because it was going to be a rated R.
So let me ask you a question then. Do you think this opens the door for that now?
I think it puts it back onto the table to have studios reevaluate what R-rated movies can accomplish.
I also think that they're probably worried that if it's rated R, it's not going to make enough money because people, like teenagers, can't go watch it.
Yes.
That was their original
and Deadpool
concern.
Proved all of them wrong by making 135
million. Yeah, that's why I think that, like, this is a great example. Like, we can get a BioShock movie, or we can get, like, more mature movies out there
that can still make money
that are more pop culture-y and still do well in the box office. Because let's face it, Deadpool's not stopping at 135 million.
Yeah.
This weekend is a good taste of what it is, but I'm guessing it's going to go up to about 300.
Yeah.
Pushing that area.
Absolutely.
If it gets to 500 million, that would be, like, I think the most it'll possibly make.
Yeah.
But for monetary, there's a bunch of movies that are always in production. There's a bunch of pop culture, comic books, anything that is incredibly mature content, and I think Deadpool opens the way for a lot of these to be discussed about. Maybe not go actually into production, but at least be thrown onto the table to see if there's interest into these genres or into these IPs.
Speaking of budget, and I know this is kind of off topic, but I don't know if anybody has seen the number now for Batman versus Superman. And I've read as high, and we were talking about this off air, as high as $410 million. Yeah. Now, if this is true,
I don't believe
this is going to
that would be the most expensive live action movies ever made.
Exactly, and I think Warner Brothers.
That is a gross amount of money.
Yes, and by the way, let's put this in perspective for all those that Powerball. That those three winners, they split about about $500 million each, give or take. So it would be about the budget of that. My point is that is just such a huge number. Is it so? If we don't take 410 at face value, okay, and it was 255. So what do we think roughly, give or take, 20 million or so? And I know that's a tough number, but like, what do you think the budget is for that?
What do we think the budget is?
It's for Batman Superman.
Okay.
Like 300-ish?
I honestly don't know how they would structure that.
And the other thing too is
how much does CGI cost? Where
yeah,
are they putting the money in the first place?
The main issue is a lot of the money is going to go to CGI, but also a lot of money is going to go to the actors.
Absolutely.
Henry Cavill is now going to be a little bit more expensive. Ben Affleck is definitely expensive actor.
And we'll talk about
Jeremy
this.
Irons is pretty pricey. So they have a lot of expensive actors in here, and then they have a bunch of other actors, with the Justice League and stuff like that. Jesse Eisenberg is pretty expensive. So I'm guessing like maybe just $100 million alone was just actors.
Yeah.
And the other, like, if we're talking $300 million is the budget that they made for this movie, then $200 million has to go into the actual movie, not just the acting. Like, even then, that seems high.
Yeah. So, I was talking about this, I think, last week or the week before. The fact that, and this has gotten so much press and marketing over the years that it's just, to me, and I love to get everybody's perspective, why do you think if they're spending that much money, and let's say it is $200 million, why aren't you going to spend $5 million for a Super Bowl commercial? I mean, to me, you're having 100 million viewers.
That actually makes more sense.
They were featured in Turkish Airlines, but it wasn't.
That actually makes more sense to me because, I know this from video games.
Yeah.
So, in video games, and their production when it comes to money is very similar. Once you start getting up closer to your cap budget, a lot of the time. So I'm guessing they hit their cap budget a couple times, and the studio kept pushing it. But at a certain point, you have to figure. Here's $5 million, and in comparison to the monstrosity budget that Batman vs Superman already is, regardless of if it's $300 million or not, $5 million doesn't seem that large. But when you take into account the fact that the budget might have been blown a couple times, and that the studio might not be willing to pay for advertising, that's when you have $5 million starts seeming that's a little much for a commercial. When you've already spammed this movie to death. If there's a person in America that doesn't know Batman and Superman's not coming out next month, then that person's been literally living in a cave
or
for
under
the last
a rock
3 months,
And we'll next month we're going to get into Batman and Superman in much more depth. We'll dissect each character and the story and how true we think it's going to say to the comics and everything else. I think that personally, I was just speaking with somebody the other night, and he said it seems a little high, but at the same time, it's going to be, it's going to be one of those movies everybody's going to go to.
Well, it's also
like a Star Wars, like one of those. Personally, I think this is going to be the 2016 Star Wars.
It also
No.
Suicide Squad will be bigger.
No,
I think so too.
I don't think Suicide Squad will be bigger.
I think it's so big because this is
it's
I think
2.5 years in the making.
I think Civil War will be bigger than this, and
Really?
You're gonna say
go
exactly
for it.
what
I'd
I'm
love to
thinking.
hear
I
about
was just gonna say that I think if any of the movies were going to, not that it's going to make a lot of money, it would have been Deadpool, just because it was really anticipated and a lot of people are going to be into it. The thing is, I say that because not everyone is going to go see Civil War. There is a huge following, but I really don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, I just say that because it's been 2.5 years in the making.
The only reason I don't say that is because it's been 2.5 years in the making. There's a lot, and because Man of Steel was not a great movie. It was a good movie.
Yes,
whereas
I think everybody would agree with that.
Whereas the last Captain America movie was arguably one of the best Marvel movies ever made.
Absolutely,
it definitely within the top three.
Yes,
and so. The main issue I think that's going to come with Batman vs Superman, there's going to be a lot of people who are excited for the movie that are going to see it opening weekend. For the movie that are going to see it opening weekend.